In this video, we're going to look at some good and bad examples of background paragraphs. And the topic I'm going to use for these examples is, should trigger warnings be required on college syllabi? And the thesis, and it's a good thesis statement, is trigger warnings should not be required on college syllabi because they could be abused by students to skip class or avoid assignments. They are not effective in helping students deal with PTSD, and it is difficult to predict what might trigger someone. Now, ordinarily, I would explain here what trigger warnings are, but since that's supposed to be part of the job of the background paragraph, I'll let that be part of your analysis of how effective each one is. So all of these four paragraphs here, actually it's five, are supposed to be background paragraphs for this essay and this thesis. So they would actually come right after that thesis statement because that would be at the end of the intro. And then the next paragraph would be the background. So I want you to read each of these, pause the video before each one, read it, and see if you think it's a good background paragraph based on what we talked about in the earlier video, and then I'll come back and give you my commentary. All right, so pause the video and read A, and then we'll come back and talk about it. All right, A is not a good background paragraph, and it does what I've seen a lot of people do, where they just basically make almost the whole background paragraph some big long quote, right? They think, oh, well, this quote's kind of explaining my topic or what my topic is. But when you do that, it just gets to be confusing for the reader because there's nothing specific for them to hone in on. So don't do that. Don't just make your background paragraph one great big long quote. Anyway, this should have been put in a long quote format if it was going to be that long. And this doesn't really have a topic sentence to set it up as a background paragraph. It doesn't really give any examples afterwards of what it's trying to define, because that's what it's ostensibly trying to do, define what a trigger warning is. All right, so that one is not a good one. Let's look at B next. So pause the video and then we'll come back and talk about it. All right, B is the other extreme. This is someone who's using no research or anything, and they're just kind of trying to create the background paragraph off the top of their head, what they know. They give their own definition, which is not cited from any source. It's kind of a vague, imprecise definition as a result. The examples are very general here. It's nothing very specific, and they just say they're becoming more and more common. And so it's not giving a lot of specific information. So when you just try to do a background paragraph just based on what you already know, you generally don't get a very good background paragraph. All right, let's move on now to C. So pause the video, read it, and then we'll come back and discuss it. Okay, C is better in the sense that it does give a good definition. And when you begin a paragraph with according to the dictionary or whatever, that is a way to kind of signal that it's a background paragraph. I don't think it's as effective as having a topic sentence that lays that out, but it's workable to do that. My problem here is after that, the example they provide isn't relevant because remember, this is supposed to be about trigger warnings on college syllabi, and this is about a television show. So they went off topic. So when you provide the definition, you've got to, if you're going to give examples, provide examples that are relevant to your specific topic. All right, let's take a look at D here. Pause the video and then we'll come back and talk about it. Okay, D is the good example. So first of all, it does a nice job of providing a topic sentence that lets us know that this is going to be a background paragraph. Before debating the merits of trigger warnings, it's important to know exactly what they are and how they're used on college campuses. And that really tells me we're going to get background here, and it tells me what the background is going to be about. So to me, that's taking it up to a higher level than what we had in C. And then, of course, we get a nice cited definition, right? So it's a definition cited from a source, so that works well. And then there are some examples there. And they're good specific examples that are relevant to the topic of trigger warnings on college syllabi. And then this particular background paragraph also has some information on how they're currently used, what the status quo is. And that's why I like to pick this topic, because for trigger warnings, you could give background on both of those things. Now, you may only need to define something and not talk about the status quo, or you may only need to talk about the status quo and not define anything, or you may just be giving background information on something else. But this is giving you examples of some of the very common types of things where you would be giving background. I also like here, by the way, that they're citing sources and very specific numbers for the current use of trigger warnings on college syllabi. So this is really what a good background paragraph looks like. And it's also not too long, right? It's well developed, right? It doesn't look like one of these itty bitty teeny ones like B or C, but it's also not way too long or with a huge quote. All right, let's pause the video and look at E, and then we'll come back and discuss it. Okay. The biggest problem I'm noticing about E is it's kind of jumping right into the argument. It's not just giving background information, right? Like it sort of gives this definition at the beginning, and that's okay. But then it says, you know, it's starting to talk about how, well, really this trigger warnings should not be used, right? Trigger warnings are a problem. People don't want to use them. So it's almost like they're starting to make their anti-trigger warning argument before they finish the background. And what they should have done is just stuck to background information, you know, defining the term, talking about how it's used or how widely or something, and save the argument for the next paragraph, because the paragraph after the background is where you start getting into the argument. All right. So a good example of how to do a background paragraph is in D, and so if you do need to do one, that would be a good model to take a look at.